humankind. It's really pissing me off. Anyway, enough about that. So, well done everyone who did hand in their assignment. But there are a couple of issues. And these issues, do you know, when you've got psychiatric problems like me, right, you think that people are doing stuff on purpose to hurt you. You know, that people are actually taking things that you've said and ignoring them because you know it's going to cause you pain if you do it. So, these are some of the recurring problems that came across assignments. So, by a show of hands, anyone in the room can answer this question. Can somebody tell me what's wrong with the first sentence on that screen? Celeste.
There's a G on Merrin.
There's a G on Merrin, first of all. Now, you'd think, if you had the paper in front of you and you'd been told who the author is, that you could get the author's name right. But no. Some people refused and instead changed his name. Now, what's the problem with this? That's not very accurate. Okay? So if you're going to quote somebody in an assignment, please get their name right. That's kind of a basic first thing. I am impressed, though, that nobody this year called him Merrin Williams. Because that happens usually, and that's very funny, and then I go to the pub with Will and I print off those assignments to show him that people can't even get his name in the right order, and then he gets really pissed off, and then we have kind of a fight, which is... So, unfortunately, I'm not able to do that this year. So, one of my brief avenues of pleasure in life has been taken away from me this year, but I hope somebody cites him in January for your essay, and you do that, and then it gives me the opportunity to take the piss out of him. But no, firstly, that's incorrect. But there is another major error in the first sentence. Can anyone tell me what it is? Georgia.
It says in his book, or it should be probably Merrin's states.
Very perceptive. We do not use pronouns in academic work. This happens frequently in your assignments. It's okay, it's the first assignment. That happens. But as a general, you shouldn't use pronouns to describe researchers, because you don't know them. It's a simple rule of thumb in writing. If you know somebody personally, use a pronoun. If not, don't use a pronoun. But in academic writing, we assume that we don't know that person at all. So, you know, there's lots of people I write about who I've met, for example, but I wouldn't say he or she in that context, or they, if that was appropriate. Good, there is another error. The other error is the one that really, really pisses me off.
It's not a book, it's a chapter. No.
That doesn't piss me off, Grace. Yeah.
The title in quotation.
Stand up. Everyone give her a round of applause. Because this, my friends, is the correct answer. Book titles do not appear in quotation marks. Book titles appear in what? Not brackets, no. Italics. Italics only. Book titles, film titles, television program titles, website titles, social media account titles, etc. They are, the keyword, titles. Quotations are things that come out of people's mouths, or things that are written in books. They never appear in quotation marks. 80% of the assignments that I've marked put titles in quotation marks. Wrong, wrong, wrong. I have mentioned it in lecture 2. I've mentioned it in seminars, and it is in the revised referencing guide as well. Don't do it again, please. Quotations for quotations. Quotation marks go for quotations. Italics for titles. Okay, moving on. Point 2, what's wrong with that? I'd say 50% of people did this. If you are referring to the decade, the 1960s, is that the way it's done? is no apostrophe in 1960s. If you use an apostrophe, it means something that is the possession of the year 1960, not referring to the decade, the 1960s. 1960s has no apostrophe. Third point, all assignments are supposed to be submitted anonymously. Do we understand this? Okay. So what that means is, if you submit the file which says your name in it, Grace, for one, I know who that person is when I'm marking it. That shouldn't be allowed. Because it could be, for example, that I look favourably upon you, Grace. I don't. Okay, I look unfavourably upon you. But it could be that I do. And then that creates an unfair situation for everyone else who has submitted anonymously. Don't submit your name in the file name or on the file itself anywhere. Okay? Overall, people do this, but I'd say about 15% of people, for some reason, put their name somewhere on it. Don't do it. Okay? The last point, somebody has done me a real solid. And I don't know who that person is because they did submit anonymously. Somebody has done me a real favour. One person submitted an assignment written by ChatGPT. They put a prompt in that said, summarised in 500 words, chapter 6 of William Merrin's book, Media Studies 2.0, and The Rise of Duck Science, the title. It is possibly the worst assignment I have ever seen in my entire life. It got 20%. 20% is the lowest mark I can award. I wanted to give it 0. In fact, what I wanted to do was give it minus, because it actually had no effort. But I asked the assessment officer, no, the lowest you can give is 20%. I got in trouble a few years ago for giving somebody an actual 0, because they handed something in and said, no, you've got to give them something. So I've given it 20. I'm going to use it forevermore as an example of what to do. It is a perfect example. Don't use ChatGPT for anything like this. It does a summary. It tells you exactly what happens in the chapter. It doesn't identify the argument. It doesn't identify why any of the points are significant, and everything is written in the second person tense. So it's like, we do this, we do that, we do that. It was one of the most stupendously dispiriting and bad experiences of my life, and I've had a few. So, don't be tempted. But I know, for the next assignment, I've actually asked you to use this, but if you do submit something via this, I think you're going to fail. Okay, is the point. This is a really, really bad technology to use for anything that involves critical thinking. It's okay for doing something that involves blunt kind of description of what something is. That's fine. On the whole, most people did extremely well at this assignment. Much, much better than any year I've had previously. So I am very, very impressed. You're very, very good and excellent. Those people who didn't do so well, I don't think there's anyone except for a ChatGPT person who has anything to worry about. It is some simple mistakes that can be corrected really, really quickly. So you wouldn't do it again, put it like that. Most people did extraordinarily well. So well done, all of you. Okay. This week, we are going to talk, it says week 4 there because I got a bit confused. It is week 7. It's Christmas soon. Son of a bitch, I'm buying Christmas shopping. That's actually pertinent today, the Christmas shopping. That's relevant. Now, we have a film poster. Who can tell me which film this is a poster for? The Marvels. Who's seen The Marvels? No one. No one has seen them. Why has no one seen The Marvels?
No one cares.
Nobody cares, nobody cares, nobody cares, nobody cares. Why does nobody care about The Marvels? This is bad. This is bad. You know, it's got Brie Larson. I care about Brie Larson a bit too much. But, you know, I care about Brie. So why has nobody seen The Marvels? It's a very good point. That Captain Marvel as a titular character has been dragged kicking and screaming through the mud and has been trashed somewhat, and therefore the launch of this film has been really problematic. What else is going on here? It's like 3 years ago, you put a Marvel film out, everyone had gone to see it. Why hasn't everyone gone to see this?
It's
Go on.
oversaturated.
Oversaturation, what does that mean?
It's been used too much and people have gone bored.
People have got bored because it's been used too much. Now, I haven't seen this film. I am not going to see this film ever. I have not seen a Marvel film since the first Avengers movie. Do you know why? Does anyone want to tell me why? I haven't get invested in this record-breaking pop cultural phenomena since, what, 2012, I think the first Avengers film? So it's 11 years. Why haven't I bothered? No. Interesting answer, but that's not true. I was a big fan of Marvel comics when I was a kid. Used to collect them, used to read them, still got a large collection of them.
Repetitive?
Repetitive. In what sense?
It's like there's nothing new. It's like they're just remaking the same thing with just different people.
Absolutely. They remake the same thing over and over again with different people. Let me tell you what the plot of the Marvels is, despite having not engaged with it at all, read nothing about it, seen nothing about it, not seen the trailer, and not bothered with it. I can tell you what the plot is. There is some kind of extraterrestrial threat to life on Earth. 1. 2. The titular character and the other characters on the billboard have some kind of distance of life learning to travel in order to be in a position to fight that extraterrestrial threat to life on Earth. Middle of the film. End, a whole bunch of shit flies around the screen, nobody knows what's going on, and they win. End. Would that be, do you think that's the plot? Does that sound reasonable? Do you know why I know that? Because every fucking Marvel film has that plot. Every one is exactly the same. They have been making the same film for 15 years. There has been no variation. Now, I'll extend this further. I have not seen any Star Wars films apart from the first 3 that were released. Do you know why? Because they are all the same fucking film. What's worse is that Star Wars might be the most racist film series in the history of humankind. Let us consider what happens in the first Star Wars film. Nazi poster boy, Luke Skywalker, blonde hair, blue eyes, wears white, okay? He is recruited by this gang of extraterrestrial terrorists to overthrow the legitimate government of the state, which is run by a black man. And indeed, the ending of the film is that Luke Skywalker, Nazi poster boy, goes along and blows up the black man's hood, the Death Star. This is intergalactic gentrification, and I am disgusted by it. And every film that they made afterwards is the same. Star Wars, fundamentally racist film series. Terrible, terrible stuff. I have not seen any of these films. Now I'm going to extend it further and tell you, I have never watched a rom-com film. Well, I've watched one. I watched one, I don't know what it was called, Bitch Fest or something, I don't know, Bride War or some shit, right? Oh yeah, see, some people have seen Bride, they're like, yeah, Bride Wars is good, yeah. What happens in Bride Wars, I have to sit through this shit, right? This Anne Hathaway here, the dark-haired one, this is how we tell the difference between people in rom-coms, what colour hair they've got. So we've got the dark-haired one, Anne Hathaway, and the blonde-haired one, which I think is Kate Hudson, and they have a conflict based on a wedding. And at the end, the nice one with dark hair, because we all know that people, women with blonde hair are bitches, right? We know this, right? So the one who's the bitch doesn't win, and the one with the dark hair wins. I don't need to watch any other rom-com ever. Because they're all the fucking same. I had to get all that off my chest. I really had to share all that stuff. Now, it's unfortunate that Disney has decided to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on this film, which, although I haven't seen it, never intend to see it, I'm prepared to give a 5-star review to right here and now. 0 stars, piece of shit. Okay, that is my review, and you can publish that online. Okay, if you want to put it on Instagram, TikTok, knock yourselves out. It is unfortunate that Disney has decided to spend enough money on the production of this film that would fund the high school education of literally thousands of poor children in the United States every year. That would take every child in the state of Florida, where Disney is based, out of the poverty trap and make sure that they had a good upbringing. That is how much money Disney has spent on this, again, Leighton's review quote, piece of shit. But this is what they have done. The reason why we don't care anymore is exactly as we've outlined here. It is the same film over and over and over again. It is always the same film. There are people who will go and watch this. Indeed, it made $47 million on its first weekend in the United States. That might seem like a lot of money. It is actually the lowest launch of a Marvel movie ever in the United States. So it looks like people are falling out of love with the actual process. What does this tell us about how Hollywood makes films?
They run out of ideas and just repeat the same.
When they run out of ideas, they repeat the same thing. Can I amend that answer a little bit? My amendment to it would be this. They never had ideas in the first place. They might have had an idea, and then it's not like they've run out of it. They've just kept on repeating the one idea they had.
They like to play it safe with films that they know are going to make money, and then so they don't try any original ideas because they're worried that they're not going to make any money on it because
Yeah.
the films are based on making money and not artistic integrity.
All Hollywood cinema is based on the idea that you must make money. That a film has a certain investment in it, and therefore, in order for the film to be successful, it must make more money than it costs to actually make in the first instance. To make and to market. So this is true as well, but there's something much more fundamental going on here. Okay, so this is the point of today's lecture. Hollywood, and it's not the only media industry that does this, but Hollywood is an industry. Full stop. Write it down. Hollywood is an industry. Now, what do we know about industry? Well, we did a lecture on Marx, 3 weeks ago, and we know certain things about industry now. Most importantly, we know that capitalist industries mass produce goods in order to make a profit. So like any other industry, this media industry mass produces a product in order to realize a profit. The media industries, which many of you have a desire to work in the future, is a site of mass production. We make a product and try to sell as much of it as possible, and if that works, that will be copied. The formula will stay the same until that formula runs out. This is what happens with the music industry, this is what happens with the film industry, this is what happens with the television industry. This is why the most profoundly depressing experience in history is having to sit and watch E4 for any length of time. E4 only has 2 programs, American sitcom and some kind of made in Chelsea thing. That's it. and Hollyoaks, which for some unbeknown reason is still on telly. I don't know why that program is still on television. It could be the worst single. If I have to be exposed to Hollyoaks for more than 8 seconds, I'm on my hands and knees praying for nuclear holocaust. That program is so bad. However, it is a profoundly depressing experience to watch E4 at any time because there are only 2 programs. Mass-produced American sitcom, all the same plot lines, all the same characters, and mass-produced British-based reality television show, all the same characters. Nothing ever happened. These people are the scum of the earth. The only way it will be entertaining to me is if you arm them with Uzis and just let them act on it. Then I'm watching. But before, that's what the formula I want to see is in reality television. And Big Brother is back right now. Big Brother would be wonderful if you gave them all grenades and just they could let them off at any point in time. Now I'm watching. I'm not watching otherwise. I'm a Celebrity is going to be back very soon. I'll watch that program if they release starving tigers into the compound. Then I'm watching. I want to see them get mauled and have limbs torn off them, and then I'm watching. But I'm not watching otherwise because I'm sick of the form. Now, we call this the culture industry. Culture is a production. What we think of as culture is actually something which is mass-produced, created, if you like, in culture factories by a culture industry which has one interest: to maximise profits. So, what we think of as our wider culture in society is actually something which is produced for us along the lines of industrial production. And that is the focus of what we're going to talk about today. If I can get the slides to move. There we go. So, we're going to talk about this very important man, Theodor Adorno. Theodor Adorno, a German sociologist from the 1930s. You will start to get the idea very shortly that the entirety of media studies is about dead German white men, because that's pretty much all the people we talk about. Theodor Adorno came up with the concept of the culture industry and the standardization of mass culture. We will criticize this argument somewhat, and we'll try and update it in the context of digital media and digital culture today, and what that means, and we should certainly touch upon the power of what we call discourse today, because ultimately culture produces discourse, and discourse has a specific role in society. I will do another lecture on discourse in a few weeks' time as well, and that lecture focuses more on what the hell it is that we're trying to do as a degree for you guys. So this, Adorno, I mean, that's some head. That is a guy, right, who doesn't get a job being an important guy today. Look at that head on it. I mean, that is oval. That is not good. He has got a face for radio, is what we would say. Okay? But nevertheless, Theodor Adorno is a very important man. He did his research, or started his research into general sort of wider sociology in what's called the Institute for Social Research in the German city of Frankfurt, and that institute became known as the Frankfurt School. So when you hear Frankfurt School, that's what it is, that grim-looking building in that picture. Adorno worked in the Institute for Social Research until the mid-1930s, and then he left. Anyone want to posit a reason why he might have done that? In the mid-1930s in the country of Germany, why might he flee? Yeah, Adorno was Jewish, and like many Jewish intellectuals of the time, and indeed, almost more important in the 1930s at that stage, Adorno was a socialist and a Marxist. They were the first people picked off by the Nazis in Nazi Germany in the early 1930s. So Adorno, seeing that his life was in danger, fled, and through a series of stages would eventually end up in the United States. So when he gets to America, he is confronted by this kind of scene. Adorno is fascinated by the difference between European culture and American culture in the 1930s. European culture is still subdued. It's still not full-on commercial. But he gets to America and everything is commercial. The king of American public life is the billboard, the advert, the product. And popular culture is a phenomenon in America which doesn't exist in Europe at that point in time as well. So Adorno's arrival in America takes his research on social cohesion and so on and transfers it to a new environment in which the commercial aspirations of companies seem to be the biggest determining factor of what culture is. All culture seems to be revolve around the point that we need to sell stuff. I guess all culture is like that now, but in the 30s in America it was a big difference to what he experienced in the UK. So Adorno's research effectively is all about what does this do and how is this done? What happens to people in this environment, but most importantly, how do we get to this stage? Adorno, as a Marxist, still believes in this model. He becomes more critical of Marxism as he goes on. But this model, which I went over in lecture 4, right, is still incredibly important for Adorno's observations of American society. In particular, what Adorno is interested in is how is this culture legitimizing how society is run. So he almost starts from the top and works his way back down. He looks at American culture and sees rampant commercialism, rampant consumerism, and asks himself the question, well, who is this benefiting? This is what American culture is. What's the point of it? And for Adorno, the point of it is to make people who own cultural industries very, very rich. So Adorno is a Marxist, but he's like a cult. I nearly said the bad term. But Adorno is a Marxist, but he's interested primarily in culture. There is a term used by the far right to describe Adorno's work, and it's called cultural Marxism. Has anyone ever heard this term? No? I want to take a note of it. Cultural Marxism is a phrase which is used to describe people who do degrees like yours. That, this is what we teach you, is cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism doesn't exist. It's not a thing. Cultural Marxism is a shorthand phrase used to describe anti-Semitism, basically. If you hear cultural Marxism on any person who's describing your degree or what your degree outcomes might be, you can point to them and say, oh, you hate Jewish people. Okay, because it's been a term used to denigrate Jewish people since Adorno's time. It's basically a shorthand saying, well, that old trope that Jews rule the world. We teach everyone cultural Marxism, then everyone will agree with us. You might think, oh, we talk about it, yeah, this is actually a genuine sort of cultural trope. You will hear it being used in British press. It's been used by British ministers of state in the last year, including the one that was sacked yesterday. So I was very keen to describe people as cultural Marxists. There isn't actually a thing for cultural Marxism, it doesn't exist. Cultural studies and Marxism are two completely different things. But in this instance, we have a Marxist who is studying culture, so he's, if you like, a cultural studies scholar. What Adorno was particularly interested in was this kind of behaviour that I've got on this slide. American cinema audiences of the 1940s. What's going on now? What's happening here? Somebody mumbled something, but I couldn't hear it.
Watching a movie is
They're watching a movie. Who's watching a movie?
audience.
The audience. Is it a big audience?
Not really.
Not really in this instance. But do you think that might be replicated in different places?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. What Adorno was particularly interested in the 1940s was how giant audiences could be assembled for the same thing over and over again. So he was fascinated by the phenomena that tens of millions of people would go to places like cinemas, experience the same text as one another, and then file out and do the same thing next week, and the same thing next week, almost like sheep. Adorno was fascinated with the idea that millions and millions of people would buy the same record as one another, the same album, the same recording, play it, discuss it with one another, and then move on to the next trend. In fact, it's a lot like, I mean, my contemporary analysis of this would be Ed Sheeran. Right? Do we have any Sheeran fans in the room? Nobody's going to say yes, are they? Because you know I'm going to bring them to the front of that. Ed Sheeran, okay, is not a human being. Ed Sheeran is a demon that has been sent up from the bowels of hell. In fact, from the first circle of Dante's Inferno, in order to lower the standards for all of us. That is Ed Sheeran's role in the cosmic play of life. You might think I'm wrong, but let me tell you, you are wrong. Because this is true. I can prove this. I'm not going to prove it right now, because it would take years and cost millions of lives. But, trust me, Ed Sheeran is a demon. Ed Sheeran sells millions of records. How? Who is buying this shit? Have we got that many deaf people in society who have CD players? What is going on? Ed Sheeran's songs stream billions of times on Spotify. How? Why are the deaf subscribing to Spotify in such numbers? Have you ever heard an Ed Sheeran? He can't sing. He has no sense of melody, tune. He can't write the song. He can't play the guitar, and his arm looks like it was coloured in by an infant. And moreover, I can say this because although I'm now grey, I used to be afflicted with the same genetic problem. He's a ginger. What are you all doing? Not aimed at you, but I'm in the same club. But you're not. Okay, I've been a ginger all my life. We're not supposed to be popular. It's half the point. That's why we become cynical outsiders. That's why we're funny. All right, Sophie, it's true. We're funny. Okay, we're the ones who are intelligent and smart and take the piss out of everyone else because we're better than them. Yes. Good. Now, he's not supposed to be popular. So what is going on? And this is even more so the problem to do with Ed Sheeran is this. Every one of his songs sounds the same. He is moping and whining about some girl that he's trying to tap off with. And it's just like, shut the fuck up already. You're like 32. This is grim. What is the matter with you? You have children. Behave yourself. Sing about something else. Sing about anything else. Actually, no. Let me amend that. Don't sing about anything else. Give up. Become a gardener. Okay? You know, there's jobs out there waiting for people like Sheeran. Okay? There's people who are needed to go manually masturbate caged animals. He can do that job. Okay? I'm happy with him having that career. There's a lot of rage in this lecture, I do apologise. I've got other people that I'm taking down as well. Now, Adorno was fascinated by this kind of behaviour. Adorno was fascinated with what he saw as like millions of people consuming trash. If you like, Adorno's main shtick here was not that mass culture existed, but that mass culture sucked. That people would happily consume lots and lots of really bad stuff. This is why I start with Marvel. That slide gets updated every year for whatever Marvel's doing is out. You can just change the slide at the beginning, you can put the new poster on. Okay, it's really consistent for the last decade that I've been doing this lecture. I've just been able to change the marble from the beginning and stay absolutely consistent. Adorno was fascinated by why we do this. Why do we keep on consuming the same thing over and over again, even though it's not very good? Because you may well be a fan of Ed Sheeran, and if you are, okay, there's no accounting of personal taste. You probably think the music that I listen to is shite as well. That's okay. Still in China, there's nothing wrong with Slayer. Right? They're a quality band. But you might think Slayer are trash, and you'd be wrong, but they are. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay? There's nothing wrong with music personally if you do. But what is interesting here is that Ed Sheeran as a product isn't particularly original. I think that's a fair comment to make. You may well like what he does, but from the context that Adorno was looking at, he'd be fascinated with, like, okay, it's not just that there's Ed Sheeran, there's a bunch of other people like Ed Sheeran. There's if you like, there's a lot of like Ed Sheerans out there, and we're consuming their output in great numbers. Why are we doing that? What is the purpose of that? Who benefits from doing that? Those are the questions that Adorno asks. For the same reason, he would ask, cinema audiences are still very large, but we seem to be going to watch the same kind of things over the time. We seem to be watching a lot of superhero movies, a lot of remakes of films that were out in the past, or sequels to things. There doesn't seem to be a huge amount of original content. What is the dynamic that's at play here? One of the most interesting things that's happened in popular culture over the past decade is the influx of nostalgia. We see remakes of things from the 80s and 90s. We see sequels to films that don't deserve sequels because they were done years ago. A couple of years ago, one of the biggest films, the Top Gun sequel, right? Was it called Top Gun Maverick? Something like that. Anyone see this movie? I forced myself to watch it because it was so big. And I remember Top Gun when I was a kid. And it's really bad, that film, Top Gun Maverick. I mean, the action sequences are pretty cool. I like things blowing up. That's sweet. But it's like, I don't get this. But then when you think about it, people my age are watching that like crazy because they want to relive their youth all the time. It's like people, when you get to my age, you think, oh shit, I used to be like 16, now I'm 40 something. I need something to remind me I was a kid. And so we've got a whole bunch of popular culture now which revolves around this idea that people my age are still kids. Basically, Adorno was interested in the phenomena of what is it that attracts people to consume in mass numbers, and what does that mean in terms of industry? What does that mean in terms of how things are produced? By observing American cinema audiences, what he noted in particular was the biggest cinema audiences went to what we would call formulaic films. In the 1940s, the films which made the most money were westerns. Now, westerns as a genre of film has kind of disappeared out of cinema back in the 1970s, really. We don't have westerns anymore, and if you do have them, they're very, very rare. But in the 40s and 50s and 60s, the western was the big money maker for Hollywood studios. And they all tell the same, broadly, very, very racist story. Just, a bunch of white guys ride out into the middle of the American West. They want to get some land to start their community, etc. There's a bunch of Native Americans there, so we'll kill them because they're dangerous and we'll take all their land. Everyone lives happily ever after, except for the Native Americans who undergo a genocide. That's basically the story of the Western genre. People loved that shit. People lapped that up. Adorno's standing there thinking, this is trash. And not only is it trash, it's dangerous trash. There's ideas floating in here which people are going to pick up which are really, really problematic. So why is it people do this? What the hell is going on? How does culture keep producing the same shit over and over again and people keep buying it? Adorno, if you want to quote to hang Adorno on it is this one. This is from Adorno and Horkheimer's book, The Culture Industry. The culture industry is just business. We should forget any notions that the culture industry is about producing art. Nothing artistic happens. Instead, we just have a series of decisions made about what is best for business, what makes us the most money. So the mass production of culture is all just a business. Nobody wants to make anything good. They just want to make stuff that makes money. Secondly, the culture industry creates false needs. We feel that we do, as loyal customers of a brand or service, have to go out and consume that stuff. If you're a Star Wars fan, you've got to watch The Mandalorian. It's canon, right? It's part of the lore of Star. There is no lore of Star Wars. It was made up in the mid-70s by George Lucas. It's not got a long history. Okay? This isn't fucking Homer's Odyssey. This is something that George Lucas made up after watching a bunch of Japanese films and a bunch of westerns when he was a kid. There is no lore of Star Wars. Okay? But you've got to get in there, because we create a false need. Okay? But that false need works in another way too. What the culture industry does is not just produce false needs for the consumption of media, but also for the consumption of other things as well. You go out and you watch movies, or you buy music, whatever, watch television, and that creates a false need for products. One of the key parts of the culture industry is to support other industries, other commercial industries. So, for example, we go and watch something, and I go and watch a band, and what's the next thing I've got to do? I've got to purchase the vinyl, I've got to buy a t-shirt. I have to buy a t-shirt. We all have to buy t-shirts of the places that we've been. If you don't do that, how are people going to know where you've been unless you buy a t-shirt? So you've got to do it. Right? People go to New York, they all buy in I Love New York t-shirts. And it's like, okay. So those guys on the street, they're making shit on some money out of gullible tourists, right? Culture industry creates false needs in us. We don't need that t-shirt, unless it's the Smashing Pumpkins t-shirt from the Gig or something, then we need that. But we don't need that stuff. What Adorno draws out, Adorno and Horkheimer, I should say, draw out in their work for culture industry, is that we can differentiate different types of culture. There is works of high culture or high art, and then, if you like, there is low culture or mass-produced culture. And the difference between them is not very subtle. For Adorno and Horkheimer, works of high culture or high art basically aren't mass-produced. So things like paintings, artworks, sculptures, the work of composers, which is music which is written rather than mass-produced in a factory, painted out onto bits of plastic, vinyl, and then shipped out to the masses. This is high art, high culture. The stuff which gets produced by Hollywood, by the music industry, but later on by the television industry, that's low culture. The magazine industry is something that Adorno was particularly interested in the 1940s, because magazines in the 1940s had a huge readership that seemed to basically produce the same stuff over and over again, the same kind of front covers, the same kind of content. People would buy them religiously, month on month on month, to consume the same stuff over and over again. That's just repetitive brainless behaviour. What's going on here? That's not high culture. A great novel, for example, would be high culture. Magazine content would be low culture. We will return to this point later, because I think there's a big problem with this idea. The idea of high culture and low culture is really, really problematic. Adorno also said that what he called folk art forms were superior to mass-produced forms. If you like, things which weren't supported by the giant industries of media, they had an authenticity about them, which meant that they weren't evil in the way that mass-produced media was. So Adorno was really keen on this idea of high art and folk culture, and really down on the idea of mass-produced culture, Hollywood, music industry, etc. He hates mass-produced media, in fact. He thinks mass-produced media rots the brain. It's a threat to democracy. It's a threat to being able to think. It's a threat to humanity, because it creates people who just consume all the same stuff over and over again, unthinkingly and unknowingly. There isn't anything good in any of this stuff. In particular, he identifies films like The Perfect Marriage. You know, I was hitting off on one about Bride Wars earlier. Same movie. Exactly the same movie. Made in the 1940s. It's the same film. This idea that you just continue to repeat the same thing over and over again. He had a real problem with mass-produced music in the 1930s, which he just saw as being, in particular jazz music in America, which he saw as being basically the same stuff over and over again. There was no variation. There was no artistic merit, because it's simply a copy. There's nothing original being made here. So if you like, that idea of artistic merit comes from the idea that it's singular, it's one thing, it's a creation on its own. He saw the music industry as just taking an idea and producing it millions of times over with no variation whatsoever. It's boring. There's nothing good about this. There's no soul to it. Nothing good comes of this. And what really pissed him is that this stuff sells millions and millions of copies. Or millions and millions of people go to watch those movies. Yet nobody's going to buy, you know, some sort of folk music thing that he might think is good. Adorno was interested in particular about what we value in society. So we're going to do a little experiment here. Can somebody who's got a really expensive bag with them, please hold it up. I will give you it back. I promise. Or nice, designer, anything like that. I can't do it myself. Look at the fucking way I dress. I don't own anything designer. Come on, people. Somebody must have something decent with them. Done? Well, I'll take a different tact with this. I'll bring it back. We have exhibit number 1. What is this? MacBook what? MacBook Air. Very nice too. That's solidly made but lightweight. I like it. We have, this is not a communication with you or your choice of computer. We have what here? What is this? Any ideas? That's all. Good man. We have a laptop. We have a HP laptop. Hewlett-Packard laptop. Hewlett-Packard, very solid company, founded in the early 1970s in Palo Alto in the United States, been consistently making high quality consumer electronics for the past 50 years. Good choice. We have with us also a MacBook Air, right? Produced by the Apple company, founded in 1976 in Palo Alto in California. The most highly valued company in the history of humankind on the stock market. Very nice. 500 quid? 1,200 quid? A grand. A difference in cost between the two things of what we got? £500. Now, aha, nice. So we have here a very nice. What phone is this? iPhone 11. Has anyone got newer than an 11? Any? 13. Lovely. iPhone 13. No, I'm not dissing 11, right? iPhone 13 here, and I've got my crappy old Google Pixel 3. iPhone 13 on release, just over 1,000 quid. I paid 200 quid for this. Now, what what happens when somebody rings me? The phone rings, I answer it, and I speak to them. What happens when somebody rings you? The phone rings, she answers it, and we speak. Can I access TikTok on this? Yeah, just about. Just slow, but yeah, I can get there, you know. Can I do Instagram on this? Yeah, no problem. Can I bank on this? Yes. Can I, you know, go on the internet on this? Can I look at the World Wide Web? Yes, I can do that. Can I track my steps on this so I can be some kind of fitness idiot? Yes, I can do that, you know. Can I do lots of other things on it? Yes. Can I watch movies on it? Yes. Can I listen to music on it? Yes, I can do all these things. And can you do all those things on your superior product? Yes, you can. What Adorno was fascinated about one of the things that the culture industry does, is create situations in which we look at products that do exactly the same thing, but we value one more than the other. So in this example, I have a Lidl carrier bag and an Yves Saint Laurent handbag. Lidl carrier bag, 15 pence in Lidl. What a rip-off. 15 pence for a fucking carrier bag. But, nevertheless, that is the price. Yves Saint Laurent bag, depends on where you get it from. Get it from Swansea Market, 20 quid. It's not real. If you get it from actually Yves Saint Laurent, we are probably talking in excess of 100 cheese. But, you know, it is what it is. I can get you one cheaper. Just don't ask where it came from. The use value of these two products is identical. Can we say that? Just as the use value of the iPhone 13 here and my shitty old Google Pixel is the same, the use value of those two objects is the same.
If anything, the little bag is more useful, it's bigger.
You can put more in the little bag. This is true. Yeah. So why aren't we all taking this on board, and instead of using high-end products, why aren't we all just carrying everything around in a little bag? Because the culture industry creates false needs. We don't need the Yves Saint Laurent bag. None of us needs an Yves Saint Laurent bag or any other designer piece of goods. We don't need them. You could argue that, but is it? I don't know the answer. That might be, for the price, that might still be really kind of weak. I don't.
So, see if I put 4 milk cartons in a little bag and that break, if I put 4 milk cartons in that side of the little bag.
I don't know. I don't think you get the 4 milk cartons in there. In the first place. And what happens if the milk carton spilled? Well, my little bag don't give a shit. Just turn it inside out, rinse some water. It's all good to go, right? That one's fucked. So you know, it's minging. You can't even give it to the charity shop then. So so fascinated discourses that go on in these classes. I love it. Adorno was fascinated by this notion that the culture industry produces what we call a mismatch between use value and exchange value. The creation of false need is really a creation of the overvaluing of exchange and the undervaluing of use. Because we see the value of this bag in terms of two things: its cost and its status. The value that it has been given as a product means that it's instantly more valuable than the little bag. But that's just an arbitrary value put on it by the vendor. Okay? For that bag, let's say for argument's sake it's £100. Well, actually, do you know what? There's probably about 10 quid's worth of material. Tops. Probably less. So, in one sense, this is a vastly overpriced thing, but we value it more not because just of the value, but also the status of it. That it confers a certain status on it, and that comes from culture. The status of that object is a cultural status. It is something which is circulated in culture itself. At the same time, the undervaluing, if you like, of the Lidl bag, which do exactly the same stuff, is a cultural thing. I choose Lidl in particular because Lidl is known as like a budget supermarket. So that's like a budget supermarket bag. It's not really, it does the same as any other bag, no? But it's not as valued in wider culture. So we will explore this idea after we have a break. So let's have a break now. Let's have fun. That water bottle is stunning, but it's the same as mine.